Thank
Sometimes
you.
they're puzzles that take a long time to figure out.
Well, you know what it is? The trick is the reason they're hard to write is because it's compressing a very deep idea into a short amount of space. And I really like doing that intellectual exercise because I find it productive for me.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of compression algorithm, though.
Yeah,
And
I like language. I think it's really fun to play with.
yeah, I wonder if AI can decompress it. That'd be
I
interesting.
think
It's a challenge.
I would like to try this, but I think I use language in certain ways that are non-canonical, and I do it very purposefully. And it would be interesting to me how AI would interpret it.
Yeah, your tweets would be a good Turing test
There
for
you go.
this for super intelligence. Anyway, you tweeted that things only look emergent because we can't see time.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we could see time, what would the world look like? You're saying you'll be able to see everything that an object has been, every step of the way that led to this current moment, and all the interactions that required to make that evolution happen. So you would see this gigantic tail.
The universe is far larger in time than it is in space.
Yeah.
And this planet is one of the biggest things in the universe.
Also, the more complexity, the bigger.
Yeah.
body
So
of
like
object
the
is.
technosphere. I think the modern technosphere is the largest object in time in the universe that we know about.
And when you say technosphere, what do you mean?
I mean the global integration of life and technology on this planet.
So all the things, all the technological things we've created.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think of them as separate. They're like very integrated with the structure that generated them. So you can almost imagine it like time is constantly bifurcating and it's generating new structures. And these new structures are, locally constructing the future. And so things like you and I are very close together in time because we didn't diverge like very early in the history of the universe. It's very recent. And I think this is one of the reasons that we can understand each other so well and we can communicate effectively. And I might have some sense of what it feels like to be you. But, other organisms bifurcated from us in time earlier. This is just the concept of phylogeny, right? But if you take that deeper and you really think about that as the structure of the physics that generates life, and you take that very seriously, all of that causation is still bundled up in the objects we observe today. And so you and I are close in this temporal structure, but we're also we're so close because we're really big, and we only are very different in sort of like the most recent moments in the time that's like embedded in us. It's hard to use words to visualize what's in minds. I have such a hard time with this sometimes. I actually was thinking on the way over here, I was like, you have pictures in your brain and then they're hard to put into words. But I realized I always say I have a visual, but it's not actually I have a visual, it's I have a feeling. Because oftentimes I cannot actually draw a picture in my mind for the things that I say. But sometimes they go through a picture before they get to words. But I like experimenting with words because I think they help paint pictures.
Yeah, it's again some kind of compressed feeling that you can query to get a sense of the bigger visualization that you have in mind. It's just a really nice compression. But I think the idea of this object that in it contains all the information about the history of an entity that you see now, just trying to visualize that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously the mind breaks down quickly as you step seconds and minutes back in time. But
for sure.
I guess it's just a gigantic object.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is one of the reasons that we have such an ability to abstract as humans, because we are so gigantic that like the space that we can go back into is really large. So like the more abstract you're going, like the deeper you're going in that space.
But in that sense, aren't we fundamentally all connected?
Yes. And this is why the definition of life cannot be the individual. It has to be these lineages because they're all connected, they're interwoven, and they're exchanging parts all the time.
Yeah, so that maybe there's certain aspects of those lineages that can be lifelike. They can be characteristics that can be measured, like with the assembly theory, that have more or less life. But they're all just fingertips of a much bigger object.
Yeah, I think life is very high dimensional. And in fact, I think you can be alive in some dimensions and not in others. Like if you could project all the causation that's in you, in some features of you, you know, very little causation is required, and like very little history. And in some features a lot is. So it's quite difficult to take this really high dimensional, very deep structure and project it into things that we really can understand and say, like, this is the one thing that we're seeing, because it's not one thing.
It's funny we're talking about this now, and I'm slowly starting to realize one of the things I saw when I took ayahuasca afterwards, actually. So the actual ceremony is 4 or 5 hours, but afterwards you're still riding whatever the thing that you're riding. And I got a chance to afterwards hang out with some friends and just shoot the shit in the in the forest, and I get to see their faces. And what was happening with their faces and their hair is I would get this interesting effect. First of all, everything was beautiful, and I just had so much love for everybody. But I could see their past selves, like, behind them. It was this effect where, I guess it's a blurring effect of where, like, if I move like this, the faces that were just there are still there, and it would just float like this, these behind them, which will create this incredible effect. But it's also another way to think about that is I'm visualizing a little bit of that object, of the thing they wore just a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
It's a cool little effect.
That's very cool.
And now it's like giving it a bit more profundity to